just a quick recap of just the progress in terms of the coronavirus here in Melbourne and Victoria and Australia more broadly. Obviously, we had some quite, I guess, high for Australia numbers recorded in the past week. We're still going through a range of restrictions, and there's a lot of discussion around exactly where those cases have been recorded. For Victoria, the first wave of it, I guess, for lack of a better term, involved a lot of overseas travellers, and now it's a lot of community transmission as it's going through, which is what they were all worried about. And there was one thing, there was an ABC article which was talking about this concept of a growth factor as opposed to the R number, which is effectively it measures how fast the number of new cases is going up or down, and we're at 1.08 at the moment. Now that's not necessarily too bad, and because, as they point out, if you were to apply that growth factor in the States, for instance, you got a whole different scenario playing out, and I think that's actually lost in some of the discussion around this sort of thing, that if nothing else, although it's all concerning and whatnot, it really is different in different countries, and it's playing out differently, and I just wonder how much of that gets appreciated in all of this discussion.
Well, I think there's a lot they know about coronavirus now that they didn't know 3 months ago. And what I find interesting is we're not really getting a lot of that side of I guess, the picture. And the reason I say that is because rather than, I think, some of the more hysterical reporting in the press about numbers, deaths, and the spread and what it could mean and that sort of thing, I think if people understood a little bit more about the virus and how it works, that would be really interesting. And that's the sort of thing that engages people and makes them a little bit more wary and makes them a little bit more likely to think of social distancing and hygiene along the way. I mean, one of the things we do know, and the G numbers are really interesting sort of development, I think, because one of the things we do know is the way we treated the virus initially was completely theoretical. So it was based around R numbers, which are transmission rates from individuals to individual, with the virus, and the modelling for the virus was all based on theoretical viral modelling, which by and large is fairly accurate in every viral case. But the actual modes of transmission and what affects the virus and what affects the uptake and what affects the spread is usually different in every case to a certain extent. And I just think that, for me personally, I think if the community understood the virus a little bit better, then you generally get more engagement. You probably get a better response in terms of dealing with the restrictions. So for me, I'm all for more information and for reports like that help us understand what we're up against.
Yeah, and just quickly, I don't know if you'd call it a comical note or a disturbing note, or maybe a combination of both, but we were just remarking before we got on about how people are reacting in the new set of restrictions. It seems like people were happy with the first, to work through the first set and sort of comply for the most part, but there seems to be a bit more belligerence around this time with a lot more fines and whatnot. Yes, there's a very unclear-cut way that all of these regulations have been applied, and seeming inconsistencies as well, when perhaps something just a bit more clear-cut should have been done just to make it absolutely clear for everyone. But there's a lot of there's a lot more people this time around that seem to be a bit more laissez-faire with the whole scenario.
And it's natural, but I think this is a real failing on behalf of our governments and some of our policymakers. So, as we just remarked, the viral modelling is modelled and still being modelled, although with new information. And beyond that as well, the whole concept of regulation and 1.5 meters, 1.49 no good, 1.51 okay, it's ridiculous. But The other thing that comes into it is the human psychology factor. Now, if I've just been through a stage 3 lockdown for 12 weeks only a month ago or so, and I didn't get it, well, then I'm going to be fine this time around. And so I will be belligerent, and so I will have a party anyway because last time I didn't catch it. Now, that's just completely just, it's very poor thinking. It's not particularly logical or rational, but that's what people do. And I think there's a fine line when we turn to experts and when we turn to modelling and we use our best endeavours. It doesn't take into account the fact that humans do what humans do. And I think that that's probably the one thing that might have been missing and hopefully we'll learn from in the future. Information, and also there's always going to be a certain population percentage that just won't play by the rules.